The ground shook as another explosion lit up the purple sky of Colony World 5. Lieutenant K moved through the battlefield with the natural grace of her species, her four-fingered hands gripping the plasma rifle tightly. The human forces had proven more resilient than expected, and this simple mission to claim the mining outpost had turned into a 3-day battle. She clicked her jaw plates in frustration as she watched her unit's position get pushed back again. The humans fought like cornered animals, refusing to give up ground even when logic dictated retreat. It was not the honorable combat she had trained for in the Starbound warrior academies. Second Squad, move to higher ground, she commanded through her neural link. Her soldiers, each as tall and proud as herself, began their coordinated withdrawal to the ridge behind them. The humans would pay for every step they gained, but K's warriors would not waste their lives needlessly. The acrid smoke from burning vehicles filled the air, making visibility poor even for her enhanced vision. K counted her blessings that at least the magnetic storms had died down, allowing their ships in orbit to provide support. As if answering her thoughts, a streak of blue light descended from the clouds, orbital bombardment incoming to cover their tactical retreat. That's when everything went wrong. The human forces had anticipated their move. A series of explosions erupted along the ridgeline, much closer than the orbital strike was supposed to land. K's neural link filled with warning signals as her squad scattered. She tried to jump clear, but the blast wave caught her mid-leap. The world spun violently. K felt intense heat, then crushing pressure, then nothing below her waist. She slammed into the ground, her armored body carving a trench through the loose soil. The battle sounds became muffled, replaced by a high-pitched ringing in her head. When her vision cleared, K found herself staring at the strange sight of her legs, or what remained of them, lying several meters away. Her combat suit had automatically sealed the wounds, preventing her from bleeding out, but the damage was catastrophic. Both legs had been severed just above the knee joints. Lieutenant K, status report. The voice of her commander cut through the haze of shock. Critical damage, she managed to respond, her voice steady despite the pain. Lower limbs, lost. There was a pause on the channel. K knew what was coming. It was their way, the warrior's path. Those who could not fight were left behind. It was an honor to die in battle rather than burden your unit. Understood, Lieutenant. You have served with distinction. Your name will be remembered. For the Empire, K responded automatically. The channel went silent. She watched as her unit disappeared into the smoke, leaving her alone on the contested ground. It was the right decision. She would have ordered the same thing in her commander's position. Yet somehow, the nobility of a warrior's death felt hollow as she lay there, watching her purple blood seep into the alien soil. Using her arms, Kay dragged herself behind the wreckage of a human vehicle for cover. Her weapon was still functional, and she had enough power cells for a final stand. The humans would be advancing soon. Perhaps she could take a few more with her before the end. The ground trembled again as artillery shells impacted nearby. Kay checked her suit's systems one last time. Life support was stable, but her neural link to the command network was dead. She was truly alone now. In the distance, she could hear the distinctive sound of human voices and approaching vehicles. Kay thought of her home world, of the great crystal spires reaching into the golden clouds. She would never see them again. But she had lived as a warrior, and she would die as one. Her hands tightened on her weapon as the sounds grew closer. The smoke parted, revealing a figure moving cautiously through the wreckage. A human, wearing their bulky marine combat armor. Kay raised her rifle, ready to make her final kill. But something made her hesitate. The human was moving differently from the others, scanning the ground rather than advancing aggressively. That moment of hesitation would change everything. Though Kay didn't know it yet. The human moved closer, still scanning the battlefield. Kay's finger rested on the trigger, but she held her fire. Something about the way this soldier moved seemed different. Less like a predator and more like someone searching for something. Or someone. Through the settling dust, She could now see the Red Cross symbol on the human's shoulder armor. Her military training kicked in. This was what humans called a combat medic. The thought almost made her laugh. The idea of risking more lives to save the wounded was foreign to her people. It was inefficient, illogical. The medic was only 10 meters away now. Kay could make the shot easily, even in her wounded state. But before she could pull the trigger, the human's head turned directly toward her hiding spot. Their eyes met through his transparent visor. "Don't move," the human called out in a common trade language. He raised his hand slowly, showing he held medical supplies instead of a weapon. "I'm here to help." Kay responded by firing a warning shot past his head. "Stay back, human. Let me die with honor." The medic didn't retreat. Instead, he took another step forward. "Sorry, but letting people die isn't really my thing. Name's Jack Martinez, Corporal, UNC Medical Corps. You've lost a lot of blood. I am Lieutenant K of the Starbound Empire. My unit has declared me battle dead. To help me would dishonor my sacrifice." She tried to sound fierce, but her voice was growing weaker. Martinez took another careful step. "Yeah, well, my unit declared this whole sector a total loss 12 hours ago. So technically, we're both dead." He grinned. "Dead people don't have to follow orders." Kay's vision was starting to blur. Her suit's medical systems were failing. "You mock our ways, human." "Not mocking. Just think there's been enough death today." He was close enough now that she could see his face clearly, young for a human, with determined eyes. "You can shoot me if you want, but I'm still going to try to save your life." Her arms were shaking now, the rifle becoming too heavy to hold. The human was right about the blood loss. The suit's seals were failing. "Why?" she managed to ask. "We are enemies." Martinez knelt beside her, already pulling medical supplies from his pack. "Because right now, you're not an enemy. You're just someone who needs help." He glanced at her severed legs, "And I'm pretty good at helping." Kay's weapon finally slipped from her grasp. The human immediately began working, injecting her with something that made the pain fade. "Your own people," she tried to warn him, "if they find you helping me." "Geneva Convention," Martinez said as he worked. "International law says I have to help wounded combatants, even enemies. Besides, like I said, we're both officially dead right now." He attached some kind of portable medical scanner to her armor. "Your biology is similar enough to the data we have. I can keep you stable." Through the haze of whatever drugs he had given her, Kay watched in confusion as this human worked to save her life. Everything she had been taught said this was wrong. Humans were supposed to be savages, barbarians who relied on numbers rather than skill. Yet here was one, risking his life to save an enemy who had just tried to kill him. "Your legs," Martinez said as he worked. "The technology exists to replace them. Better than new, if we can get you to the right facilities." He looked up at the sound of distant explosions. "But first we need to find somewhere safe. This position is too exposed." Kay felt strength returning as the human's medicine took effect. "My people will come back," she warned. "They will kill you for interfering with a warrior's death." Martinez finished sealing her wounds and sat back on his heels. "Then I guess we better not be here when they come looking." He looked at her seriously. "I'm going to help you, Lieutenant K. You can either work with me and live, or fight me, and we both probably die. Your choice." The distant sounds of battle were growing closer. Kay looked at this strange human who defied everything she thought she knew about his species. She had already lost her honor by surviving. Perhaps it was time to learn why humans fought so hard to save every life. "I will cooperate," she said finally. "But know that you bear responsibility for whatever dishonor this brings." Martinez just smiled as he began preparing to move her. "I can live with that." Moving through the battlefield debris wasn't easy. Martinez had rigged a makeshift stretcher using pieces of broken armor panels, but every movement sent waves of pain through Kay's body despite the medicine. She watched the human strain with the effort of dragging her to safety, his head constantly turning to check for danger. They found shelter in the ruins of what had once been a storage facility. The thick walls were still standing, and the basement level offered protection from both orbital scans and artillery fire. Martinez carefully lowered Kay onto a cleared space and immediately began setting up a more permanent medical station. "Your people make everything so complicated," Kay observed as she watched him unpack various devices and medicines. In the Starborn Empire, a wounded warrior would simply be given a quick death. Clean, honorable, not this messy struggle for survival. "Yeah, we're funny that way," Martins replied, connecting a portable power cell to what looked like a medical scanner. "We think life's complicated enough without making up extra rules about who deserves to live or die." He checked some readings on the device. "Your vital signs are stabilizing, by the way." A distant explosion rattled dust from the ceiling. Kay's head turned toward the sound, her warrior's instincts still sharp. "Both our forces think this area was destroyed in the orbital strike. We should be safe for now." She paused, then added, "Though safety won by hiding is hardly honorable." Martinez didn't look up from his work. "You know what's not honorable. Letting good soldiers die when they could recover and fight another day." He pulled out a small device and began adjusting it. "Your empire loses a lot of experienced warriors that way, doesn't it?" Kay started to object, then stopped. She had never thought about it that way before. How many great warriors had been lost to the death ritual? How much knowledge and experience died with them? She watched as Martinez continued working, his movements quick and practiced. "What is that device?" she asked, partly to distract herself from these uncomfortable thoughts. "Portable fabricator. Military grade." He held up the machine proudly. "Can't make anything fancy, but it should help me put together some temporary prosthetics for you. Won't be pretty, but they'll work until we can get you proper ones." Kay's jaw plates clicked in surprise. "You would give me the ability to walk again, even though I might use it against you." Martinez shrugged. "Way I see it, you've got three choices. Try to kill me and definitely die out here alone. Go back to your people and probably get killed for surviving. Or," he looked at her meaningfully, "maybe consider that there's another way to be honorable besides dying gloriously in battle." Before Kay could respond, both of them froze at the sound of voices above. Human voices. Martinez quickly moved to a defensive position, drawing his sidearm. Kay reached instinctively for a weapon that wasn't there. The voices passed without discovering them. But the moment had changed something. They had both automatically acted to protect each other. Kay found herself wondering when exactly she had started thinking of this human as an ally rather than an enemy. "Your medical knowledge," she said after the danger had passed. "How long did it take to learn?" Martinez looked surprised at the question. 4 years of school, 2 years of field training, plus constant updates as we learn more about different species." He smiled slightly. "Why?" "Thinking about a career change." Kay ignored his attempt at humor. "In the Empire, we consider medical knowledge beneath a warrior's dignity. But you fight death itself, and you seem to win more often than not." "That's one way to look at it." Martins turned back to his work on the temporary prosthetics. "Though personally, I think helping people is just as noble as fighting them. Sometimes more so." The sounds of battle continued above them, but down in their hidden shelter, Kay found herself learning more about humanity than she had in all her years of combat against them. Every time Martins treated her wounds, or shared his rations, or worked on the prosthetics, he challenged everything she had been taught about honor, strength, and the nature of warfare. As she watched him work, Kay realized that surviving might turn out to be more life-changing than dying would have been. After 3 days in the basement shelter, Kay was getting used to the strange temporary legs Martinez had made. They weren't pretty, just metal and plastic cobbled together from salvaged parts. But they worked. She could stand now, even walk a little, though Martinez insisted she rest as much as possible while her wounds healed. "Tell me about your home," Martins said as he changed her bandages. They had fallen into a routine of sharing stories to pass the time between medical treatments. What's it like on a starborn world? Kay closed her eyes, picturing her homeland. The gravity is stronger than here. The air is thicker. Everything is built tall towers that reach into the clouds, made of living crystal that grows and changes color with the seasons. She paused, remembering. Warriors train in floating arenas above the cities, where the winds test our strength. Sounds beautiful, Martinez said. Different from Earth. We mostly build out, not up. Sprawling cities, huge open spaces between them. He finished with the bandages and sat back. Though these days, most of us live on colony worlds like this one. Why do humans spread so far from their home? Kay asked. It was something that had always puzzled her. The Empire teaches that you do it out of greed, to steal resources from other worlds. Martinez laughed. We do it because we're curious. Humans can't help wanting to see what's over the next horizon. He checked the power levels on her medical monitors. The resources help, sure, but mostly we just want to explore, to see new things, meet new people. Even people who try to kill you. Kay's jaw plates clicked in what Martinez had learned was her version of a smile. Hey, some of my best friends started out trying to kill me. He grinned back. Speaking of which, how are the new legs feeling? Kay stood carefully, testing her balance. Strange, but effective. In the Empire, we would never. She stopped, realizing she had been about to reveal military information. Would never what? Use battlefield repairs. Martinez raised an eyebrow. I already know your people consider it dishonorable. But you know what I think. True dishonor is wasting lives, yours or your enemies, when you don't have to. A distant explosion made them both look up. The fighting had moved farther away, but it was still going on. Kay took a few experimental steps, the mechanical legs whirring softly. You could have killed me that first day, she said suddenly. It would have been easier, safer. Why take the risk? Martinez was quiet for a moment. There's something we humans call the Geneva Convention. Rules about how to treat people during war. One of the big ones is that you help wounded soldiers, even enemy ones. He looked at her seriously. But that's just the rule. The real reason. Because every life has value. Because showing mercy to an enemy is sometimes the first step to turning them into a friend. Kay thought about this as she walked another circuit of their shelter. The Empire had always taught that humans were weak because they cared too much, because they wouldn't sacrifice individuals for the greater good. But watching Martinez work, seeing how he fought to save lives with the same dedication her people brought to taking them, she was beginning to see things differently. In the Empire, she said slowly, we have a saying, victory through strength. But strength, she gestured at her new legs, at the medical equipment keeping her alive. Perhaps we define it too narrowly. Martinez smiled. Now you're getting it. Real strength isn't just about who can hit hardest. Sometimes it's about who can help most. He started packing up his medical supplies. Speaking of helping, want to learn some basic field medicine. Never know when it might come in handy. Kay looked at him in surprise. A warrior, learning healing arts. It went against everything she had been taught. But then again, she had already broken so many of her people's rules just by surviving. And Martinez was right. Knowledge was its own kind of strength. Teach me, she said, sitting down beside him. As Martinez began explaining about different types of bandages and medicines, Kay realized that she was no longer just learning to survive. She was learning a whole new way of thinking about what it meant to be strong. The sound of marching feet above made both Kay and Martinez freeze. They had gotten used to the distant sounds of battle, but this was different. These footsteps were organized, purposeful, searching. Starborn Patrol, Kay whispered, recognizing the precise rhythm. A full squad, moving in standard search pattern. She could feel her hearts beating faster. Her people were thorough. They would find this basement eventually. Martinez quickly began gathering their essential supplies. We need to move. There's a tunnel system that connects to the old mining complex. If we can reach it. Wait, Kay grabbed his arm. I hear the commander's neural beacon. It's my old unit. Her jaw plates clicked rapidly, a sign of distress that Martinez had learned to recognize. The footsteps grew closer. Through the ceiling, they could hear voices speaking in the harsh clicks and whistles of the Starborn language. Martinez looked at Kay, his face serious. "Your call," he said quietly. "I can help you get back to them if that's what you want." He paused. "But you know what they'll do when they find out you survived." Kay knew. The punishment for violating the warrior's death code was execution, not just for her, but for anyone who had helped her survive. She looked at Martinez, who had spent days keeping her alive, teaching her, showing her a different way of thinking about honor and strength. The voices above grew louder. Kay could understand what they were saying now. They were searching for signs of survivors, following reports of movement in this sector. She heard her commander's voice giving orders to check the basement level. "Martinez," she said urgently, "if they find us, they will kill you slowly. My people, they do not understand mercy. They see it as weakness." She struggled to her feet, the mechanical legs whirring. "You must run. I will surrender myself. Tell them I survived alone. Maybe my rank will buy you enough time to." "Not happening." Martinez checked his sidearm, but kept it holstered. "I didn't spend all this time keeping you alive just to watch you die now. We go together, or not at all." Heavy footsteps on the stairs made them both turn. Kay's mind raced. Everything she had been taught said she should accept her fate, face her death with dignity. But everything she had learned in the past few days told her there was another choice. A harder one, perhaps, but one that might lead to something more important than an honorable death. The basement door began to open. In that moment, Kay made her decision. She grabbed Martinez's medical pack with one hand and his arm with the other. "The tunnel," she whispered. "Run." They moved as quietly as they could toward the hidden entrance Martinez had discovered days earlier. Kay's mechanical legs were silent thanks to his careful work, but each step was still a challenge. Behind them, she could hear her former unit entering the basement. Life signs detected. One of the warriors called out. 2 signatures, moving away. After them, her old commander ordered. No survivors. Martinez helped Kay through the tunnel entrance, then quickly pulled the debris back over it behind them. The tunnel was dark, but Martinez's pack had light sticks. They moved as fast as they could, Kay leaning on him when her temporary legs threatened to give out. "They'll track us," she said between breaths. "The neural network. They can follow my biomass signature. Then we'll have to be smarter than their technology." Martinez pulled out a small device. "Remember those medical nanites I gave you? They don't just heal. They can mask biosignatures too. Might buy us some time." Kay felt a surge of respect for this human who seemed to have a solution for everything. She had chosen to trust him over her own people, to choose life over death, healing over destruction. It should have felt like betrayal, but somehow it felt right. "If we survive this," she said as they hurried through the darkness, "I want to learn more about your healing arts. Perhaps there are better ways to serve the Empire than dying for it." "First things first," Martinez replied, but she could hear the smile in his voice. "Let's focus on staying alive. Then we can work on changing the galaxy." Behind them, the sounds of pursuit echoed through the tunnels. But for the first time since losing her legs, Kay felt truly strong. She had made her choice, not the easy choice of death, but the harder choice of living to make a difference. The mining tunnels twisted and turned beneath the battlefield, a maze of dark passages and abandoned equipment. Kay's mechanical legs scraped against the rough floor as she and Martinez made their way forward, guided only by the dim glow of his light sticks. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit echoed off the walls. "Wait," Kay whispered, pulling Martinez to a stop. "Listen." Her enhanced hearing picked up something ahead. "There are others in these tunnels." Martinez dimmed the light stick and pressed close to the wall. "Refugees, maybe. This area was evacuated when the fighting started." He pulled out his medical scanner, adjusting it to detect life signs. 3 groups ahead. 2 human, 1 starborn, all moving away from the battle. More wounded? Kay asked, thinking of how Martinez had found her. Probably. These tunnels are the only safe way out of the combat zone. He looked at her carefully. Think you're up for helping me with some field medicine? Kay's jaw plates clicked in surprise. You would trust me to help your wounded? You're the one who wanted to learn healing arts, Martinez said with a small smile. Time to put those lessons to use. They moved forward carefully until they found the first group, 3 human civilians, 1 with a badly injured leg. They froze in terror at the sight of Kay, but Martinez quickly stepped forward. It's okay, he said calmly. She's with me. We're here to help. Kay knelt beside the injured human, remembering everything Martinez had taught her about wound care. Her 4-fingered hands were surprisingly gentle as she helped clean and bind the injury. The humans watched in amazement as a starborn warrior worked to heal instead of harm. More coming, Martinez warned, checking his scanner. Your old unit's still behind us, but they're being slowed down by the tunnel system. They moved from group to group, helping where they could. Kay found herself working alongside Martinez as if they'd been partners for years, not days. When they encountered a wounded starborn soldier, she spoke to him in their language, convincing him to accept help rather than death. The look of confusion on his face when she explained her new understanding of honor almost made her laugh. The exit is ahead, Martinez said after they'd helped their 5th group of refugees. But your people are closing in. We need to make a choice. Try to outrun them or find a way to stop them, Kay finished. She looked around the tunnel, her tactical training taking over. These mines, they were not just for minerals, were they? Martinez caught her meaning. No, they stored explosives down here too. We could seal the tunnels behind us. Not to kill, Kay said quickly, just to block the path. Look at you, Martinez grinned, already thinking like a medic, how to stop the enemy without destroying them. They worked quickly, using Martinez's knowledge of human mining equipment and Kay's understanding of starborn tactical movements. When her former unit rounded the corner, they found themselves facing a wall of fallen rock instead of their targets. They'll find another way around eventually, Kay said as they hurried toward the exit. True, but by then we'll be long gone. Martinez checked his map. There's a neutral medical station about 10 kilometers from here. People like you there, ones who've chosen a different path. The tunnel began to slope upward, and Kay could see light ahead. Her mechanical legs were wearing out, but she kept moving. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit had faded, replaced by the distant rumble of their controlled cave-in doing its work. You know, Martinez said as they neared the exit, for someone who was ready to die for honor a few days ago, you've gotten pretty good at staying alive. Kay thought about how much had changed since he'd found her on the battlefield. She had lost her legs but gained a new purpose. Lost her unit, but found a friend. Lost one kind of honor, but discovered another. Perhaps, she said as they emerged into the sunlight, that is because I finally have something worth living for. Martinez smiled and helped her over a fallen beam. Come on then. Let's go find you some proper legs. Then we can really start making a difference. Ahead of them stretched a new path, one that led away from the battlefield and towards something neither of them had expected to find in the middle of a war. 3 months had passed since Kay and Martinez reached the neutral medical station. Kay stood at the window of her recovery room, watching ships from both sides land at the facility's docking area. Her new legs gleamed in the morning light, a marvel of combined human and starborn technology. They responded to her thoughts just like her original legs, but they were stronger, faster, more resilient. The door opened behind her, and she turned to see Martinez entering with his usual grin. He wasn't wearing his marine armor anymore. Here, he worked as a full-time medical trainer, teaching others what he had taught her. Ready for the big day? He asked, setting down a datapad. The first group of students is waiting. Kay nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. After her recovery, she had surprised everyone by requesting permission to stay at the medical station. More surprisingly, both human and starborn authorities had agreed. Her story had spread, and others had begun to listen. 6 warriors from the Empire, she said, checking her own datavat. All wounded in battle, all choosing to learn healing instead of accepting death. She looked at Martinez. They're here because of what we did. Don't forget the 4 human combat veterans, Martinez added. They want to learn starborn medical techniques too. You're building bridges, Kay. Both sides are starting to see there's another way. They walked together to the training room. Inside, Kay saw them. Starborn warriors with various injuries, sitting beside human soldiers who had once been their enemies. All of them looked up as she entered, their faces showing different mixtures of curiosity and uncertainty. Welcome, Kay said in both languages. I am Lieutenant Kay. Once, I was a warrior of the Starborn Empire. Now I am something more. She gestured to her legs. Like many of you, I was wounded in battle. I was taught that death was the only honorable choice, but I learned there is more honor in healing than in dying. Martinez stepped forward. And I'm Corporal Martinez, formerly of the UN Marine Corps. I'm here to show you that our differences don't have to divide us, that we can learn from each other, help each other, make something better than endless war. One of the Starborn warriors raised his hand. But the Empire's laws, the warrior's code. The code speaks of strength and honor, Kay replied. But what is stronger, to die in battle or to live and help others survive? What is more honorable, to take life or to save it? She walked among them, her new legs moving smoothly. We can be more than warriors. We can be healers too. A human veteran spoke up. The brass said this program is just a publicity stunt, that it'll never work in the real world. Martinez smiled. They said the same thing about the Geneva Convention centuries ago. Now it's the foundation of how we conduct warfare. He looked at Kay. Sometimes it just takes one person choosing a different path to change everything. Kay activated the medical training programs they had developed together. The room filled with holographic displays of both human and starborn anatomy. Today, we begin learning both ways of healing. Tomorrow, we will practice them together. And soon, perhaps, we will teach others. As she began the first lesson, Kay caught Martinez's proud smile. She remembered those desperate days in the basement shelter, when he had first shown her that survival wasn't shameful and that mercy wasn't weakness. Now, in this room, something new was growing. Understanding between species, respect between former enemies, hope for a different future. Later that evening, Kay stood again at her window. A newly arrived group of wounded were being carried in, humans and starborn together. But instead of being separated, they were being treated side by side, their medics working together just as she had hoped. Quite a change from that battlefield, Martine said, joining her at the window. You know, when I found you that day, I just wanted to save one life. Never thought we'd end up saving so many. Kay's jaw plates clicked in a smile. You taught me that true strength lies in helping others. Now we teach it together. She touched the window lightly. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Yep, Martinez agreed. But it's a good beginning. Outside, the sun set on another day of peace in this small corner of the war, where former enemies learned to heal together, and where one act of mercy had started a quiet revolution of hope.